Jeff Moreland.
It's just a glare from my screen from, my eyes get tired. So
Yeah.
Jeff, give me some of that hair for my head, brother.
Me too. While you're at it,
I need every
spread it around.
I was looking at Posey's hair. I was trying to figure out what he was doing.
Right. He's been doing that for a minute. If you got it, they say work it.
Okay, so where's the rest of the team at? Oh, here they come. All right.
Let me know if you want me to share my screen. So I've got that up and ready to go when you're ready.
And so before we kick off, Jeff, I was just going to say that was a very impressive presentation. So well done to you and the team. And, we talk a lot about the need to have diversity in these areas. And you're not talking about it. You show what it could look like. So thank you for that. And that was very inspiring.
Thank you, Johnny. I appreciate that. I do. What's up, Lee?
Hey, what's happening, baby? How you doing?
Doing good. So somebody gonna put up the slides and so we can talk about these barriers and get moving. First of all, who's gonna be the moderator for the COAC that's going when we go back together to talk to the group? We probably should decide that because last time we didn't do that and we got to scramble who was gonna be the COAC talk person.
I'm gonna nominate the good Reverend J.W. Matthew Hennessy to be the moderator.
Right, Reverend Dr.
Hennessy. Let the church say amen.
Amen.
I
was going to nominate Lee. I don't know what you're talking about.
I know you were. That's why I beat you to it. See, the Lord spoke to me. He said, trouble is coming on the horizon. Anyway, listen, because we only have a little bit of time. Right. Jeff, listen, man, I got some things to say, man. And, and again, first and foremost, let me preface it again, like I've said to you before in private and in public, man, I am so happy you are on this project. However, I am still hearing more of the same. And as the SDO for the county, these are things that I'm driving to change in this area. I know these are the questions that we're supposed to be addressing, but I think if I don't say this, we'll never really get to some real solutions. Number one, I'm always concerned about the identification of the goal. I know what ODOT is restricted by, and I have problems with that because it seems to me we keep allowing old laws, rules, and requirements to hold us back from 21st century solutions. I know of a 1958 covenant on the transportation books that's holding up and causing a tremendous barrier for what we need to have done today. And these laws aren't changing. That's number one. So that said, 18 to 22% sounds good for DBE participation, but to the analytical mind that understands this process, what the hell does that really mean? It's not saying it. It's like James Brown. It's talking loud and saying nothing. It's good fluffery. What does that mean in terms of a disaggregated barrier? I was looking through the plan. The plan starts off real nice. The preamble was great. We're looking to build the capacity of minority-owned businesses. We're going to look to do this. And then we get to the goal and it says DBE as the proposer, as the contractor, you're not restricted from identifying how you're going to impact this community. You should be stating the goal has been established at 18 to 22%. Here's what we're going to do in that goal. We're going to look at African-American business, X, Hispanic businesses, so on and so forth. And so to that point, there needs to be, I keep pushing it for this in this area. We are lazy. We don't do capacity studies. Do we even know how many businesses by ethnicity exist in this area to do business with? I already know the answer. So I'm trying to put these things out there because we're going to keep on getting the same results if we keep doing business the same way. Another thing. Yeah, the green sheet tool, that sounds great. But again, if we're not getting some real meaningful data out of that to start with, we're going to get the same results because DBE is not ethnic specific enough for me. because again, we're going to come back to the same things, and someone who I respect highly will keep having frustrations with projects like this, and I can't blame him, okay? Because these are the things that we have to challenge ourselves, both as contractors and public agencies, to do better, to get better information. Integration of diversity in the leadership in the team. You know, this is great, Jeff, and again, I'm so glad you're there. But the people that were introduced today, good to see different faces, but where do they fit in the org chart? Are they up there making crucial decisions? Or are they just worker bees? You know, these are things that stress me with businesses when they show up at Multnomah County talking about, we believe in diversity and we believe in diversity and inclusion. And I'm looking at 7 white men trying to sell the county on their project solution. That's not diversity and inclusion to me. So I just want to put these things out because they're going to address, because if we don't honestly have open and honest conversation about this, we'll never get to the historical barriers. We'll never get to any of these other solutions and questions that's here. We're going to keep on having the same questions that we've been fighting for the past 12, well, more than that years. These problems preceded Phlegm. So Phlegm wants to see some things really move and change.
Lee, let me jump in. Let me just say a couple things. First of all, let the church say amen. All the things you said, brother, I'm lockstep with, which is why we're here today, because we're going to take you down a step-by-step barrier on how we get there. So all the things you're talking about, Lee, is all the things that we have consistently done, and it's the science behind that. The reason why the green sheet and all that stuff is not populated yet, because I just don't pull it out of we don't pull it out of our butts. We don't pull it out of thin air, right? We actually have to look at the estimate and look at the work, because that's how we inform the capacity. What capacity is out there has to be based on what work is actually associated with the actual project. Once we identify that work associated with the project, we go out and see what capacity is out there. And what that also does is help us identify where the capacity building opportunities, right? And I'm not going to put a plan together that just has flagging and trucking. We know those things, but those things don't build our businesses, right? You know what I mean? You don't do nothing for us, right? That stuff is ancillary to construction, right? So what we're doing is we're going to take a systematic approach to this, right? That's where we started from, and that's why we're going to walk through it this way, because we have to identify these barriers clearly, and each one of these steps we're going to work through in great detail. And I appreciate you saying that, because that's my heart, and you know that, and my legacy bears that out. I have, the management team at Raymond was 70% us, right? People of color, specifically African American, and they make it all decisions, right? You know what I'm saying? And
yes, sir.
I believe that empowerment is exactly what you're talking about. That's how we change the narrative. For the first time, man, I'm just talking to the brothers specifically. I have a huge team through, the Sutton Hamilton JV that is committed to hearing my voice. Even though I'm still one of the few minorities in the room, we're changing that. We're working on that heavily, but they're committed to this, man. You have ODOT with Megan and her team. They really things are going to be different on this project. We have to work collaborative. It's not going to be the same old game. Otherwise, I won't be here. You know what I mean? If I don't feel that we're going to be able to really impact something or change something, I'm not going to be a part of it. Everybody knows me, and I'm dead serious. And I don't mind having a conversation with anybody, whether that's ODOT, whether that's y'all, whether that's the JV team, because it's about building my community. That becomes the most paramount thing to me, right?
Exactly.
So with that, I appreciate you getting that out there. But this is where we got to start with these historical barriers, because we want to know that we get everything right. Right? What else do we need to be looking at? We need your help with this, because that's going to inform the whole plan, right?
Exactly.
The whole plan is going to be around, bringing solutions to these barriers, right? How do we overcome this in a real way? You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So that's what I would say to you. Kenichi, you got your hand up. I don't know if I'm supposed to be facilitating or not, but y'all know me. Go ahead, Kenichi.
Thank you, Mr. Moreland. Again, congratulations on this project. I'm very excited to see all your successes here. I had a few notes as I reviewed this on barriers that I don't see here, but are very real. Okay. Financial literacy for business owners, it's top of mind for me. It impacts everything from access to capital to bonding so that needs to be up front and center. Accessing labor is a barrier and will be a growing barrier over time and through the course of this project. And then the steep learning curve for firms that are in their beginner stages, or even intermediate firms, quite honestly. There's a steep learning curve to working with ODOT. There's a steep learning curve from when a business is birthed to when it's able to deliver on its first project. I see the barriers here list out a couple intangible things like the lack of trust. I think that I'd like to see in the potential solutions some more tangible action items that will kind of translate into this work. So that's those three. I have 3 recommended barriers, and then on the potential solutions, I'd like to see a little bit more granularity and more tangible action items. But great start on this.
Kenichi, that's absolutely fire. And, you know, coming from a banking background, you know that one of the biggest things that plagues our people is not having financial literacy, right? And really understanding this. So even if we put, you know, the resources in their hands, you know, they need to, you know, understand how to build it, right? And not be overly consumers, which we have been conditioned to be. So that's absolutely fire. This is exactly what we need on here, you know what I mean, is accessing labor, you said, and the learning curve. Those are all just absolutely fire, Kenichi. So I want you to know that those are things we've thought about. We need to figure out how to incorporate them, you know, in this a little bit more on that piece of it. But while you have you, we're talking, you know, do you agree with those other? I get you want more tangible solutions for that lack of trust, and that's one we're working on because that just takes time. Because ODOT, let's just face it, ODOT doesn't have a good history, right? You know, a lot of these major infrastructure projects, and not just the I-5, you know, I was talking to Shelly, and Shelly rewrote part of this one of the things. She included the Emmanuel Hospital. She included, you know, the Oregon Convention Center. She included the Motor Center, right? All these things were done on the backs of our people, right? And so all these things we need to be, you know, thinking about. So that's fine. Thank you. Sorry, Matt, go ahead, Matt.
To the group, I'm grateful to be here tonight. And I wanted to go back to, and I say this lovingly and in this with a sense of humor, so I hope you'll take it that way. I wanted to go back if we could, and then come forward to the breakout questions as we listen to the Reverend Lee Fleming. The Reverend Lee Fleming. What is the Reverend Lee Fleming Posey? Because when I saw that James wasn't here, I was like, who's going to take James's place? So I found out who that was real quick. So thank you. I appreciate that. No, if I could, here's what I'd like to do to try to help us through this, if you don't mind.
Yep.
One, I do think that it's, and again, Jeff, you know, I'm your cheerleader. There's no question about that. What we heard is Lee saying that great plan. Do a better job identifying the goal and doing that with 21st century solutions in mind. What I'd like to ask you, and again, I know this isn't part of our work tonight, but it's on the table, so I thought it'd be good to do. We see the 18 to 22%, but I would really like to see us give our aspirational goal. A long time ago, I worked with the South Waterfront project with PDC. And I said, you know, that's whatever it wasn't good enough. I said, let's push ourselves to a greater goal. You don't have to make that decision tonight, but I think it's important to have an aspirational goal as we look at this. Thirdly, what we heard is, you know, specific goal for the African American community, the Latinx community, and I'm assuming the indigenous community as well. You've spoken to the green sheet tool that you need a more complete information to bring data to it. So that's incomplete right now, but that you'll bring that to the table. I loved what Kenichi said about some things. In fact, my words, she used financial literacy. Mine that I had written down was capacity and the ability to create sustainability. Because some of what occurs is that you've got people out there who can do the work, but they don't have the capacity to get it done. How can we have, you know, some of the businesses who are able, and this happens because I've seen it happen in industry where some will come alongside and say, let me do my part to help you, so that if you don't have an ability to set up a, drawdowns and stuff like that, we can help you with that. So I don't need to get granular with it, but I think it's important. I also think that the issue of lack of trust. So my thought is, we'll go back to number one in a second if everybody's okay. On the issue of lack of trust, part of it is setting up proper expectations in the first place. What do we expect of one another? And then how do we, on a regular basis, make sure we look at the progress and say, are we getting there? Because the trust is never going to happen by an assumption that it's just going to happen organically. That's not true, in my opinion. There's too much stuff. And so there's some specific things, it seems, that we've got to decide. Here's what we expect. Here's what we're going to inspect. Here's how we're going to look at our progress. And where things don't work well, we've got to come together and work them out. So in terms of potential solutions, I think it's got to be, the words there are fine, but I think we've got to be a little bit more specific and talk about the fact that we have to set expectations with each other. Does that make sense to everybody or no?
No, that resonates great, Matt. That's fine. It really is.
It does.
It really is. Good.
So I think we've got to do that. And on a regular basis, we've got to check in and make sure that we're actually getting where we said we were going to go. And wherever there needs to be a modification to our expectations, we need to be in position to say, let's together work that out, right? And let me just say this last thing. It is important when it comes to this that we treat it like an engagement, what I call radical collaboration, which means we are coming to the table and we are determined to stay at this table. We are not going to walk away because we are determined that we're going to figure this out. All right, that's one of the things I would, those are some things I would suggest. I don't know who's taking notes, but I hope you'll help me on this, but I just think in the lack of trust area, that's one of our biggest issues right there. It's a foundational issue when it comes to this, right?
And that's even across the board, even, the contractor and the agency, we have to build that level of trust, right? And without that, we're not going to be successful because we'll never have open, honest dialogue. We'll never have the collaboration that Lee's talking about that ultimately drives us. We'll never get to the specifics, right? That we need the whole other accountable to, right? And that's the beauty of the COAC, because the COAC, is not just here to hold the CMGC accountable, it's here to hold the agency accountable. It's here to hold everybody that's involved in this project accountable, right? In a very transparent way. So go ahead, Joe. Sorry, I want to keep moving so we don't run out of time. Joe, what you got?
Yeah, as I look at the document and the barrier, ineffective outreach, I would like to put on the table that the solution involve some sort of compensation. So if we're talking about, if there's a real, in my opinion, if I were in charge and I was committed to making sure that disadvantaged and African-American businesses were best prepared to respond, I really wanted them on my team, given the fact that we just discussed about the lack of capacity due to historic systems. So I'd like to just see as a potential solution that there's some sort of compensation that comes along with the outreach. So it's not just a phone call or an email. It's come hear about what we're doing and we will compensate you for your time because we really want you to be a part of this project. So compensation as it relates to outreach.
I'm sorry, Joe, let me make sure I'm hearing you correctly. Are you saying compensate folks to show up and get information?
Absolutely.
I have never heard of that being done.
Exactly. It's
but
a lot of
I hear you.
Hold on, let me finish. There's a lot of things we haven't heard about. And I know this, This is the first time I've really been in these rooms, but I got to tell you, I've been in these rooms for the last few years, and I'm hearing the same story over and over and over again. If we don't do something bold, my grandchildren will be having the same conversation. So yeah. So the recommendation is clear. Put some money on the table. If you really want folks who have been put behind the 8 ball, if you're really serious about getting them to the table, you need to put something on it.
So Joe, let me jump in, Joe. I appreciate that. And I get exactly where you're coming from. And although it's going to be, for a contractor perspective, I can tell you that's going to be extremely difficult that way. But there is ways that when we get them, the reason why we're doing this engagement early and get our firms in early, right? And we have the CMGC, we're not asking them to do something for free either. Because what you're really talking about is we often ask them to do a bunch of stuff for free. So we come in, they have to do all these estimates, and they have no mechanism to get paid for all these different estimates they're doing and building out. And then they spend all this time and resources and don't get to work. Right, that's what you're really talking about. You're talking about our
kids. Yeah, what I'm really talking about is when I want something, when I really, really, really want something, if I'm serious about it, then I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is.
Absolutely. And that's what I think that ODOT, to the best legally, I think in my conversation, they've always been saying that we're going to do things differently. So we're not going to ask our companies to do stuff for free. We got to figure this out. We're going to employ people like this internship program, right? We're going to, they're going to get paid, you know what I mean, to learn. Our people are starving, right? To keep the population we're targeting, that you deal with every day, Joe. You know what I mean? It's hard for me to ask them to do a voluntary internship. So we have to pay them, to come in and to be able to help get them trained and do this stuff. So we're talking about a lot of these different things that we're developing on the JV side. These are the things we're talking about. And we understand the restrictions that ODOT's going to have because they got to get all the stuff from DOJ. Right? At the end of the day, they got a lot of hurdles they got to figure out how to do. And I get, Lee, what you're saying, that some of these laws, we got to come in with new age thinking. I am new age thinking. I get the results because I'm on the line all the time. I'm going to stretch the envelope to the nth degree if I can, but I still have to paint between the lines, right? We still have to paint between the lines. So I get it. And I appreciate that, Joe. Thank you.
And that's some out of the box thinking, Joe. So don't misunderstand my reaction. I was like, wow, I would have never thought of that. But I'd also like to see this flipped. And what I was attempting to say, because for brevity, is that the team be intentional about actually physically recruiting. Go through, find out who's available, reach out to them. Don't wait for them to reach us or reach out to you. You go find them, and then you help them determine what their capacity is. Mm-hmm. You help figure out where they can fit into the schedule. Be intentional about this. Otherwise, if we had done it that way, the old way, we wouldn't have gotten the participation we did on the courthouse.
Absolutely.
But we pushed the team to reach out to folks. In fact, I gave them a list of folks to contact.
And you contacted some of those people yourself, Lee.
Exactly. And this is why I'm saying we need to do different things. And Joe, when you said what you said, I was like, wait, what? Hold on, that might work though. I understand what you're saying, because there's a lot of work going into developing these responses, which is why I don't believe in wasting people's time. And I put the onus on the team to take the initiative to reach out, so that it's not that crush on the other side. But Joe, I really appreciate that.
Okay, Christine, let's go to you and hear from you. We haven't heard from you.
Yes, a couple things. I'll be real quick. One, make sure you put the API community on your list too of ethnic groups.
Yeah.
Do not leave us out. We have a lot of communities that are actually in poverty and so on. Number two, usually I don't say very much because everybody's covered everything, but since Michael isn't here, I'm wondering, and I don't know if this is the right place for it to put, what about a living wage job for the everyday worker? That's not mentioned, and that's going to be important to lift up the workers, not the executives or the managers or with consultants, the everyday worker in the community to earn a living wage job so they can, what do you say, meet their goals or whatever. So that's not been mentioned also. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. So the beauty of construction, what I would say to you, this is why I left corporate and came to construction, because it allowed living wage jobs to be put into people's hands without a huge, you didn't have to have a college degree. You know, all you had to do is have a strong work ethic and want to learn, and you can come in. A journeyman laborer makes $30 an hour. That's $30 an hour plus a full benefit package. That is a living wage, right? You know, field engineers at the entry level are making anywhere from $45,000 to $60,000 a year, depending on where they are. So you don't have all the barriers that you have. And when you have companies like Raymore, Son, and Hamilton, they're willing to take a flyer and put these people and then work with people to help them grow into their jobs, right? To be able to have these living wages so they can actually support the community. Okay, so Kenichi, we back up to you.
Trying to remember what I wanted to say. It's been a couple minutes.
You gotta put your hand down because I'm gonna call on you with your hands.
No, I did have something. It's just, it took a while. So I think going back up to question 1 and 2, Pastor Reverend Hennessy sparked something for me when he was talking about historical barriers. And I'm going back to the document and looking at it right now. Cultural competency with both prime contractor and agency staff. I think I think that needs to be expanded a little bit more. When I think about cultural competency, I think, yes, it's both sides. How does the subcontractor work with the GC, and how does the GC work with the subcontractor? There's a lot of, I think, demystifying the working relationship that I'd like to see as part of this project. And then on the outreach piece, with the robust conversation that's happening around that, how do we, because we have to acknowledge that this might happen post-COVID, right? So hopefully it happens post-COVID, but reaching out to people in ways that are different and unique outlets. So are we utilizing other community-based organizations that are separate from the membership groups, where communities of color show up in? And then there was one last one around the excessive paperwork requirement piece. I see here, collaborate with the team to explore ways to reduce paperwork requirements. Oh, no, I found it. It wasn't the mobilization elements. Relaxed retainage requirements. We want to be careful with that, because some of these retainage requirements are tied to debt instruments, depending on how the contractor is financing their project. So there's just some things that we want to make sure that we checks off all the boxes legally and with, things that people are wanting to do. Not everyone, sometimes it happens before people realize that there's like an unintended consequence. So as we're working through relaxing things, we just want to make sure that we're capturing all the back end things. What was the last one here? Yeah, I think the technical assistance is described in greater detail in another section. I think that's it.
It is.
Yeah.
So Kenichi, I wanted to, before I go to Matt and then back to Joe, because Matt should be up next, then Joe. The relaxing the retainage is when they have, oftentimes the retainage requirements extend past that person's work. Once that work is accepted, but they got to wait for the job ends to get their retainage. That's what we're talking about. Why do you hold retainage on truckers? There's nothing they're putting in the ground. So we don't want to just have retainage for just the sake of having retainage. That's what we're talking about. Go ahead, Matt, sorry.
That's great, thanks.
No, that's fine. Actually, it's funny that I was following Kenichi here as well tonight on the cultural competency thing. Number one, I just feel so strongly that, oh shoot, we've only got 9 seconds. All right. I just feel strongly about the importance